The night they put her on that dusty auction block, I knew two things. The world had gone rotten, and I'd burn it all down before I let her be taken. The town of Copper Bend didn't have much to recommend it. A collection of weathered storefronts, a saloon that never closed, and a sheriff who looked the other way when gold changed hands. I'd ridden in that evening with a pack horse loaded with pelts, looking to trade for winter supplies and maybe a bottle of whiskey to chase away the memories that came with the cold months. I wasn't looking for trouble. But trouble has a way of finding a man, especially when he spent the better part of his life trying to outrun it. The crowd had gathered in the town square. Such as it was, a clearing of packed earth between the general store and the land office. Torches threw dancing shadows across faces I'd seen before. Weathered men with hungry eyes and women who'd learned to look away from things they couldn't change. The air smelled of sweat and smoke and something darker, something that made the war scars on my back itch beneath my shirt. That's when I saw her. She stood on a platform of rough planks, wrists bound with rope that had already rubbed her skin raw. Her dress traditional Apache, though torn and dirtied, caught the torchlight, and her dark hair fell past her shoulders in waves that should have been carefully braided, but instead hung loose, testament to whatever violence had brought her here. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold. Black as a starless night, and filled with a pride that hadn't broken despite everything. She wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking through it, past it, to some distant point on the horizon where I imagined her people waited. Gentlemen! The auctioneer was a rail-thin man named Polk, known for dealing in things that weren't exactly legal, even by Arizona Territory standards. We've got ourselves a rare treasure tonight. Young, strong, knows her way around camp work. Fresh from the Chiricahua band that's been troubling the eastern ranges. A lie. The Chiricahua had been quiet for months, keeping to the treaty lines. But truth didn't matter much in Copper Bend. I should have walked away. Should have collected my supplies and ridden back to my ranch in the foothills, back to the solitude I'd carved out for myself after the war. A man could live a long time if he kept his head down and his conscience quiet. But her eyes found mine in that moment, just for a heartbeat, and I saw something in them that I recognized. The same thing I'd seen in my own reflection after Appomattox, after the promises I'd made to dying men and couldn't keep. Terror buried deep beneath defiance. "We'll start the bidding at $50, Polk announced, his voice carrying across the square. 75. The voice came from my left, a man I recognized immediately. Calvin Hendricks owned the Three Rivers Ranch, 10,000 acres of prime grazing land and a reputation for cruelty that extended from his cattle to his men to anyone who crossed him. He stood with his thumbs hooked in his vest, a man used to getting what he wanted. 100. An old prospector I didn't know, already swaying drunk. 150. Hendricks again, not even looking at the prospector. His eyes were fixed on the woman, and something in his expression made my jaw clench. The bidding continued, numbers climbing while she stood silent, her bound hands clenched into fists. The crowd pressed closer, drawn by the spectacle, by the promise of seeing something broken. I'd seen enough breaking in my time. I'd done enough of it myself. $300. My voice cut through the murmur of the crowd, and heads turned. Hendricks's eyes narrowed as he found me at the edge of the gathering. We'd had dealings before. I'd refused to sell him water rights during the drought 2 years back, and he wasn't a man who forgot slights. "Well now," he drawled, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip. "Didn't know you were in the market for company, Mercer. Thought you preferred keeping to yourself up in those hills." 400, I said, ignoring him. The crowd had gone quiet now. This wasn't about the woman anymore, it was about two men with history, and everyone could smell the coming storm. 500. Hendricks stepped forward, his boots loud on the packed earth. "And Mercer, you should know, I don't take kindly to interference in my business." I met his gaze and held it. I'd stared down Confederate artillery and Apache warriors and my own demons in the bottom of too many bottles. Calvin Hendricks didn't frighten me. $600, I said. Cash. It was nearly everything I had, the money I'd been saving to repair my barn before winter. But numbers on a ledger didn't seem to matter much, not with her standing there. Not with the memory of other women I hadn't been able to save during the war, women whose names I still heard in my dreams. Hendrix's face darkened, his hand tightening on his gun. For a moment I thought he might draw, consequences be damned. But Polk cleared his throat nervously. Even in Copper Bend, shooting a man in front of witnesses over an auction was frowned upon. 600 going once, Polk said quickly, eager to finish before blood was spilled. Going twice. Sold to Jace Mercer. The crowd dispersed slowly, disappointed there'd been no violence. Hendrix held my gaze for a long moment, then leaned close enough that only I could hear. You've made a mistake, Mercer. She's mine by rights. My men caught her near Three Rivers Land. I'll have what's mine, one way or another. Then you should have bid higher, I said. He smiled, cold as a December wind. We'll see how long you last with a target on your back. Give it a week, you'll wish you'd never laid eyes on her. He walked away, his men following like wolves trailing their alpha. I watched him go, already calculating. My ranch was remote, but not remote enough if Hendrix wanted trouble, and he always wanted trouble. Your purchase, Mr. Mercer. Polk gestured toward the platform nervously, eager to be done with the whole business. I climbed the rough steps and stood before her. Up close, I could see the bruises on her wrists, the exhaustion in the set of her shoulders, the way she held herself ready to fight despite having no weapon and no hope. I'm going to cut these ropes, I said quietly. I'm not going to hurt you. She said nothing, but her eyes tracked my hands as I drew my knife. The crowd had mostly cleared, but a few stragglers remained, curious. I cut through the rope with 2 quick strokes, and she pulled her hands free, rubbing at the raw skin. Do you speak English? I asked. For a moment she said nothing, then, yes. Her voice was rough, either from thirst or from screaming. I didn't want to know which. My name is Jace Mercer. I have a ranch about 15 miles north of here, up in the foothills. I'm going to take you there tonight, and in the morning, I'll give you a horse and supplies, and you can go wherever you want. Back to your people, if that's what you choose. But right now, we need to leave before Hendrix changes his mind about how this ended. She studied my face for a long moment, and I could see her weighing whether this was another trick, another trap in a series of traps that had brought her to this auction block. Why? She asked. It was a fair question. I'd asked myself the same thing in the heartbeats between bids, knowing even then that I was buying more than one woman's freedom. I was buying trouble that would follow me home. Because it was wrong, I said simply. What they did here tonight, what they're doing to your people. I can't fix all of it, but I can fix this one thing. She nodded slowly, and I saw her decision in the slight relaxation of her shoulders. Not trust, it was too soon for that, but a temporary alliance born of necessity. I am Aiyana, she said. Of the Chiricahua. Can you ride? Better than you. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Pride was good. Pride meant she hadn't broken, not where it mattered. Then let's go before I have to shoot someone and prove you right about white men being fools. I'd left my horses at the livery at the edge of town, and we walked through the darkened streets in silence. A few faces peered from windows, and I knew that by morning, every soul in Copper Bend would know that Jace Mercer had bought himself an Apache woman and spirited her away into the night. The stories would grow with each telling, as stories do on the frontier. By the time the tale reached the neighboring territories, I'd either be a saint or a devil, depending on who was doing the telling. Right then, walking through the darkness with a woman who had every reason to hate me and mine, I felt like neither. Just a tired man trying to do one right thing in a world that seemed determined to run short on them. The livery was run by an old-timer named Seamus who'd lost 3 fingers in the war same side as me, which bought a certain amount of discretion. He took one look at Aiyana and then at me, shook his head slowly, and said nothing as I saddled my mare and the pack horse. You'll want to take the canyon trail, he said quietly as I led the horses out. Heard Hendrix's men are drinking heavy at the saloon. They might get ideas about riding out to intercept you on the main road. Obliged, Seamus. Mercer? He caught my arm, his grip surprisingly strong for a man his age. Whatever you're doing, be careful. Hendrix doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. I know. Do you? His eyes were serious in the lamplight. He killed a man last year for taking water from one of his streams. Shot him in the back and told the sheriff it was self-defense. Sheriff believed him, or pretended to. You understand what I'm saying? I do. He released my arm and stepped back. Then God go with you. You'll need him. I helped Aiyana onto the pack horse she mounted with the easy grace of someone who'd grown up in the saddle and swung onto my own mare. The night was cool, stars scattered across the sky like scattered diamonds, and somewhere in the darkness trouble was gathering. But for now, we had a head start and I had a promise to keep. We rode north, away from the lights of Copper Bend, into the waiting darkness of the Arizona night. We rode through the night, following deer trails and dry washes that would hide our tracks come morning. I didn't speak, and neither did she. There was a language in the rhythm of hooves on stone, in the creak of leather and the whisper of wind through mesquite, and both of us understood it better than words. The canyon trail Seamus had mentioned wound through red rock formations that glowed like dying embers in the starlight. It added 3 hours to our journey, but it would take a skilled tracker to follow us through the stone, and even Hendrix would need daylight for that. Dawn found us climbing into the foothills, where juniper and pine began to break up the desert landscape. My ranch sat in a protected valley, a small basin with a year-round creek and enough grazing land for the modest herd I kept. It wasn't much a log cabin, a barn that leaned slightly to the east, corrals that needed mending, but it was mine, bought with war pay and built with my own hands. I'd lived alone there for 5 years, and the solitude had been a kind of medicine. Now, watching Aiyana's eyes scan the valley as we descended, I wondered what she saw. A prison? A way station? Or just another place white men had claimed from her people? The creek runs year-round, I said, breaking hours of silence. House is small, but the roof doesn't leak. You can rest there while I see to the horses. She nodded but didn't dismount when I did. Instead, she sat her horse and studied the cabin, the corrals, the tree line beyond. Looking for escape routes, I realized. Planning, even now. I meant what I said in town, I told her. Come morning, you're free to go. I'll give you supplies, a horse. You can ride to the treaty lands, find your people. Or head to Mexico, if that's safer. Your choice. Why should I believe you? It was the first full sentence she'd spoken since we'd left Copper Bend, and the exhaustion in her voice made her sound younger than she looked. 20 maybe, 22 at most. Too young to have seen what I suspected she'd seen. You shouldn't, I said. You've got no reason to trust a white man's word, but I'm giving it anyway. You'll see I mean it when the sun comes up. She dismounted finally, moving stiffly hours in the saddle after whatever she'd endured before the auction. I saw her wince and bite down on it, refusing to show weakness. Pride. It would keep her alive or get her killed. Sometimes the line between the two was thin as wire. I unsaddled the horses and turned them into the corral, giving them grain and fresh water. The mare nickered softly, pleased to be home. The packhorse, usually placid, shied away from Aiyana at first, catching the scent of something unfamiliar, something wild. But she spoke to it in Apache, words I didn't understand but recognized as soothing, and the horse settled. Come on, I said. You need food and rest. The cabin was dark and cool, smelling of wood smoke and leather, and the loneliness that accumulates in places where men live alone. I lit a lamp and watched her take it in, the simple furniture I'd built, the rifle over the door, the small shrine in the corner where I kept a Bible I never read and letters from men who died under my command. There's a room in back, I said. It's small, but the door locks from the inside. You'll be safe there. She turned to face me, and in the lamplight, I could see the full measure of what the past days had cost her. Bruises darkening along her jaw, scratches on her arms, and in her eyes, a wariness that went bone deep. "Why?" she asked again, and this time the word carried more weight. "Why save her? Why bring her here? Why offer freedom instead of claiming what men like Hendricks saw as rights of purchase?" I'd spent 5 years trying not to think about the war, trying not to remember the things I'd done in the name of duty and country. But looking at her, I couldn't escape it. "I did things during the war," I said slowly. "Things I can't take back. I followed orders I shouldn't have followed. I hurt people who didn't deserve hurting." I paused, weighing how much truth to give her. "Your people, among others." There was a village up in the Mogollon Rim country. We were hunting Confederate deserters, but some Apache had given them shelter. Our captain said to burn it all. Make examples. Her expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or just the confirmation of what she'd always known about men like me. "I can't undo what I did," I continued. "But I can choose different now. I can choose not to be that man anymore, even if I can't forget him." I gestured to the back room. "So that's why. Because you were standing on that auction block, and I had a choice. Simple as that." She was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made me feel transparent, like she could see straight through to all the broken pieces I kept hidden. "The Chiricahua remember that raid," she said finally. "It was 7 winters ago, 12 killed, including children. The soldiers burned our winter stores and left us to starve." The words hit like bullets, each one finding its mark. I'd known there were deaths, there were always deaths, but I'd never let myself think about the details, about the winter that came after, about the children. "I'm sorry," I said, and the words were ash in my mouth. Inadequate, worthless. "Sorry does not bring back the dead," she said. But there was no heat in it, just a flat statement of fact. "But you are right, you can choose different now. We will see if your choices are true." She walked to the back room and closed the door. I heard the lock slide into place. I stood alone in the main room, listening to the silence, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life or the first right decision in years. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. I woke to the sound of breaking glass. The cabin was still dark, but the quality of the darkness told me dawn was close. I rolled from my bedroll on the floor. I'd given her the only bed and grabbed my rifle in one smooth motion, years of training taking over. Another crash, this one from the barn. Horses screaming. Hendricks, he'd come faster than I'd expected, pushed through the night on fresh mounts. I'd underestimated his anger, or his desire for revenge, or maybe just his sense of ownership over things he thought belonged to him. I moved to the window and risked a glance. 4 riders in the yard, torches burning, and the barn was already catching fire. They'd doused it with kerosene. I could smell it even through the cabin walls. "Son of a bitch," I muttered. The back door opened and Aiyana emerged, moving silently despite the chaos outside. She'd found my spare pistol somehow. I'd forgotten it was in the back room, and held it with the confidence of someone who knew how to use it. "Your friend from town?" she asked. "Not my friend, and yes, he comes to kill you?" "Eventually. First he'll want to talk, make threats, give me a chance to hand you over. I checked the rifle's load. When I refuse, then he'll try to kill me. You plan to refuse?" I looked at her, really looked at her. She stood in my cabin, holding my gun, asking if I'd betray her to save my own skin. In her position, I'd have assumed the answer was yes. Most men would choose their own lives over a stranger's freedom. But I'd stopped being most men somewhere between that village in the Mogollon Rim and this moment. "Yes," I said. "I plan to refuse." Something shifted in her expression, not quite trust, but maybe the foundation of it. "Then we fight?" "You don't have to. There's a root cellar under the back room, hidden panel in the floor. You can hide there, wait until this is over. I am Chiricahua," she said, cutting me off. "We do not hide while others fight our battles." Outside, a voice boomed across the yard. Hendricks, as I'd known it would be. Mercer, I know you're in there. Come out and we'll talk like civilized men. I moved to the front door, staying clear of the window. Talk from out there, Hendricks. And call off your men before my barn burns to the ground. A pause, then laughter. The barn's just encouragement, Mercer. Motivation for you to be reasonable. Send out the squaw and we'll be on our way. You can keep your cabin, your land, your life. Otherwise, ... Otherwise what? You'll burn it all, kill me? For what, Calvin? For buying something you wanted? For bruising your pride? For taking what's mine? The rage in his voice was raw, unhinged. My men caught her. My money should have bought her. You had no right. She's not property, I shouted back. She's a person. And if you can't see that, then you're more of an animal than you claim her people are. Silence. Then, you've got 1 minute to send her out, Mercer. After that, we're coming in, and we're burning this whole valley to ashes. I looked at Aiyana. She'd positioned herself by the side window, the pistol steady in her hands, her expression calm. Whatever fear she felt, she'd buried it deep, where it couldn't touch her. The root cellar, I started. No, you could wait this out, leave after. No, she met my eyes. You chose to stand for me. I choose to stand with you. This is the Apache way. It's a fool's way. You don't owe me anything. I owe myself, she said. I will not hide while men decide my fate above my head. Not again. Never again. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't about me, or Hendricks, or even survival. This was about her reclaiming something that had been taken from her, the right to fight, to choose, to stand as an equal rather than cower as property. I'd be damned if I took that from her too. All right, I said. But you follow my lead. This cabin has advantages: thick logs, small windows. They'll have to come through the doors, and that gives us a choke point. We make them pay for every inch. She nodded, and we took up positions, me at the front, her at the back. Outside, Hendricks was counting down. 40 seconds, Mercer. My barn blazed in the pre-dawn darkness, flames reaching for the sky. 5 years of work, of building something with my own hands, going up in smoke because one man couldn't accept losing. 30 seconds. I'd killed men during the war. 27 by my count, though there might have been more in the chaos of battle. Each face was burned into my memory, each one a weight I carried. I'd sworn after Appomattox that I'd never kill again, that I'd live quiet and let the bloodshed stay buried in the past. But some oaths were meant to be broken. 20 seconds. Beside me, Aiyana whispered something in Apache. A prayer, maybe. Or a war song. I didn't ask. 10 seconds, Mercer. This is your last. I fired through the window, my bullet catching the torchbearer on the left. He went down screaming, his torch falling into dry brush that ignited instantly. The others scattered, surprised that I'd shot first. Guess we're done talking, I muttered, already reloading. You surprised them, Aiyana said. They expected you to surrender. Then they don't know me very well. Gunfire erupted, bullets slamming into the cabin walls. Hendricks and his men spread out, trying to surround us. But the cabin sat against a rock face on the north side. There was no way around. They have to come through the doors or risk the windows, and either option left them exposed. I fired again, aiming for muzzle flashes in the growing dawnlight. Heard a grunt of pain, maybe a hit, maybe just a near miss. Aiyana fired from the back, her shot deliberate and controlled. She'd been trained, I realized. This wasn't her first fight. How many? She called. Started with 4, including Hendricks. I got 1, maybe 2 are wounded. But he'll have more coming. He wouldn't risk his whole operation on 4 men. Then we cannot stay here. She was right. The cabin was defensible, but only temporarily. Once the sun rose fully and Hendricks brought reinforcements, we'd be trapped. And he'd burn us out eventually, just like he burned my barn. The horses, I said. If we can get to the corral, they will shoot us before we reach them. Not if we give them something else to shoot at. I moved quickly, gathering kerosene from the lamp, a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving. Stuffed a rag in the bottle's neck and soaked it. A crude bomb, but effective enough. When I throw this, you run for the corral, I said. I'll cover you from the doorway. You will die. Maybe, but you'll live. That's what matters. She grabbed my arm, her grip strong despite her exhaustion. That is not what matters. If you die, I am still hunted. If I die, you are still hunted. We survive together or not at all. Aiyana, this is not your choice alone anymore, Jace Mercer. She used my full name, and something in the way she said it made it sound like she was claiming ownership of it, making it hers to use. You asked why I should trust you. Now I ask the same. Do you trust me? Did I? I'd known her less than 12 hours. She was Apache, and I'd fought her people. She had every reason to hate me, to let me die, to run when the chance came. Logic said I should trust no one, especially not someone with such cause for revenge. But looking into her eyes, I saw something that transcended logic, the same thing I'd seen on that auction block. Not just pride or defiance, but a fundamental refusal to surrender to a world that demanded submission. I'd felt that same refusal in myself after the war. It was what had kept me alive when dying would have been easier. Yes, I said. I trust you. She nodded, satisfied. Then we fight together. You throw your fire bottle at the barn, what is left of it? Create smoke, confusion. I will go first to the horses, low and fast. You follow. We ride before they regroup. It was a better plan than mine, and we both knew it. I lit the rag, counted to 3, and hurled the bottle through the broken window. It arced through the dawn light and shattered against the burning barn, the whiskey igniting in a whoosh of blue flame that sent up a pillar of black smoke. Aiyana was moving before the bottle hit, out the back door in a crouch, her dress hiked up to free her legs. I fired 3 times at shadows in the smoke, not aiming to kill but to keep heads down, then followed her. Gunfire chased us, bullets kicking up dirt at our heels. I heard Hendricks screaming orders, heard horses neighing in panic. The smoke was thick now, acrid and choking, but it gave us cover. Aiyana reached the corral and vaulted the fence like she'd been born doing it. My mare was already at the gate, spooked by the gunfire, but trained well enough not to bolt. I grabbed her halter while Aiyana caught the pack horse. No saddles, she said. No time. We mounted bareback, and I kicked the mare into a gallop just as Hendricks emerged from the smoke, his face twisted with rage. He fired, the bullet passing so close to my head that I felt its wind. Then we were past the burning barn, past the cabin, climbing the trail that led into the high country where horses would give us advantage over pursuit. Behind us, Hendricks's voice carried on the wind. This isn't over, Mercer, you hear me? I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth, both of you. But his voice faded as we climbed higher, the horses sure-footed on terrain they knew. By the time the sun cleared the eastern peaks, we were miles away, and Copper Bend was just smoke on the horizon. We rode hard through the morning, following game trails that wound deeper into the Mogollon country. This was wild land, barely mapped, where Apache still moved freely despite the treaties and broken promises. It was also territory where Hendricks and his men would have to tread carefully or risk ambush. Around noon, we stopped at a stream to water the horses and rest. Aiyana slid from her mount and immediately checked its legs for injury, then did the same for mine. The practiced way she moved spoke of a lifetime around horses, of a culture that had learned to live as one with them. They're sound, she said, but we push them hard. They need rest before we can run again. We need rest too, I said. My shoulder ached where I'd torn something climbing onto the mare, and exhaustion was catching up with me. There's a canyon about 3 miles north. It has an overhang, defensible position. We can hole up there, maybe get a few hours sleep. She nodded, though I saw the wariness in her eyes. We were in her people's territory now, and while that offered some protection from Hendricks, it brought complications of its own. The canyon was where I remembered it, a slot in the red rock with a shallow cave carved by centuries of wind and water. I'd camped there before, during my wandering years after the war, when I'd been trying to figure out who I was without a uniform and orders to follow. We led the horses into the shade, and I set about making a cold camp. No fire, the smoke would give away our position, but I had jerky and hardtack in my saddlebags, along with a canteen of water that tasted of metal and dust. Aiyana accepted the food without comment and ate mechanically, her attention focused outward, always scanning. A lifetime of being hunted had taught her that stillness was a luxury you paid for with vigilance. "Tell me about your people," I said after we'd eaten. The silence between us had grown comfortable during the ride, but now I wanted words, wanted to understand who this woman was beyond the surface. She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "What do you want to know?" "Whatever you want to tell me. Why? So you can report it to your army. Tell them where to find us." The bitterness in her voice was earned, and I didn't flinch from it. "No, because I spent years fighting people I didn't understand, and I've spent years since trying to understand them. Because you're not just some woman I bought at an auction. You're Aiyana of the Chiricahua, and if we're going to survive this together, I should know who you are." She studied me in that penetrating way she had, looking for lies or hidden motives. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her, because she settled back against the canyon wall and began to speak. "I was born in the season of first snow," she said. "My mother was a healer. My father a warrior who rode with Mangus Coloradas before the betrayal at Apache Pass. They taught me the old ways, how to read the land, how to speak with the spirits, how to survive when white men came with their guns and promises that turned to ash." She paused, her fingers tracing patterns in the dust. "I had a brother, Dakota. He was 5 summers younger than me, but he thought he was braver than any warrior. When I was 15, soldiers came to our camp. Not the ones who raid and burn. These ones came with papers and peace talks. They said we must move to the reservation, that it was for our own safety. My father refused. He had seen reservations, seen how the Apache withered there like plants without sun." Her voice had gone flat, the way people's voices do when they're speaking of pain too large to fully feel. 3 days later, soldiers came again, different ones. Your kind of soldiers. They said we harbored criminals, that we'd stolen cattle, killed settlers. All lies, but they had orders, and orders matter more than truth to white men. I closed my eyes knowing what was coming. I'd been part of scenes like this, had followed orders without questioning, without thinking about the people on the receiving end. "They burned our camp," she continued. "My mother died trying to save our winter stores. My father died fighting to give us time to run. Dakota and I escaped into the mountains with others from our band. We survived that winter, barely. We survived the next year and the year after. But Tako ... She stopped, swallowed hard. Dakota couldn't let go of his anger. He formed a group of young warriors, said they would fight back, make the white men pay for what they'd done. I begged him not to. Told him it would only bring more soldiers, more death. He didn't listen. Said I had become weak, that I'd forgotten what they did to our parents. "Is he still alive?" I asked quietly. "Yes. He leads a band now, 20 warriors who raid settlements and ambush patrols. The army calls them renegades. He calls himself a defender of our people." She met my eyes. 3 weeks ago, I tried to find him, to convince him to stop before he got everyone killed. That's when Hendrix's men caught me. They thought I was a scout for Dakota's band. They were going to hang me, but Hendrix decided selling me would hurt my brother more. The pieces fell into place. Hendrix hadn't just wanted her as property, he'd wanted her as bait. A trap to draw out a warrior who'd been causing problems for ranchers in the territory. "Does your brother know where you are?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe. His scouts see much." She looked at me directly. "If he finds you with me, he will try to kill you. He will think you're my captor, that you bought me to ... She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Then we'll have to convince him otherwise. She laughed, a sharp sound without humor. You cannot convince Dakota of anything. He sees only enemies now. White faces are all the same to him. The faces that killed our parents, burned our home, your face. She paused. The face of the man who raided our winter camp 7 years ago in the Mogollon Rim. The blood drained from my face. What? You said you raided a camp, killed 12 people, burned winter stores. I knew that camp. Knew those people. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with something I couldn't name. 3 of them were my cousins. 1 was my mother's sister. You killed my family, Jace Mercer. The world seemed to tilt. I'd known abstractly that my actions in the war had consequences, had hurt real people. But having one of those people sitting 3 feet from me, having saved her life and had her save mine in return, it was too much, too immediate. I didn't know, I said, and the words were ash. We were told they were hostiles, that they'd harbored deserters. We were following orders. Orders. She spat the word. How many have died for white men's orders? How many more will die? I don't know. I met her eyes, refusing to look away from what I'd done. But I was wrong. I was wrong then, and no amount of apologizing will fix it. I can't bring back your family. I can't undo what I did, but I can choose different now. I can choose to stand with you instead of against you. That has to count for something. Does it? She stood, paced to the mouth of the cave. Her shoulders were rigid, her hands clenched into fists. You saved me from one white man only to tell me you're the same as him. That you killed my blood, burned my people's food, left children to starve. How is that different? It's not, I said quietly. I'm not different, Aiyana. I'm just a man trying to do better than he did before. That's all any of us can be, better than we were yesterday. She was silent for a long time, staring out at the canyon country spread before us. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, tired. My mother used to say that anger is a fire. It can warm you or consume you, but you must choose which. I have been angry for so long, I don't remember what warmth feels like. I stood and walked to stand beside her, careful to leave space between us. I've been angry too. At the war, at the men who sent us to fight, at myself for following orders I knew were wrong. That anger drove me into the wilderness, away from people, because I couldn't trust myself not to hurt someone else. And now? She asked, are you still angry? Yes, but I'm trying to aim it better. At men like Hendricks who see people as property. At a system that turns neighbors into enemies. At the part of myself that's capable of what I did to your people. I paused. You have every right to hate me. Every right to walk away right now, take one of the horses, leave me here. I wouldn't blame you. She turned to face me fully, and I saw tears tracking down her cheeks, though her expression remained composed. I should hate you, she said. I want to hate you. But when I look at you, I see a man who stood on an auction block and paid everything he had for a woman he didn't know. I see a man who burned his own home rather than surrender someone to slavery. I see a man who admits his wrongs instead of hiding behind excuses. She wiped at her tears roughly. How can I hate that man? Even knowing what he's done? I don't know, I said honestly. But I wouldn't think less of you if you did. She shook her head slowly. My mother also taught me that people can change. That the warrior who kills today can be the peacemaker tomorrow if they choose that path. She said the spirits watch our choices, not our past. They see what we become, not what we were. What do you see? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment, her dark eyes searching mine. I see a man trying to become something better. I see ... She paused, seeming to wrestle with words. I see someone who might understand what it means to carry ghosts. Who might understand me. The honesty in her words hit harder than her anger had. We stood there in the mouth of the cave, 2 people shaped by violence and loss, trying to figure out if redemption was possible, or just another story we told ourselves to get through the night. I understand more than I want to, I said quietly. She nodded, then turned back to survey the canyon. Dakota will come. If he's heard I was captured, he'll be hunting. And when he finds us together, She didn't finish. We'll face it together, I said. Like we faced Hendrix. Together, she repeated, as if testing the word. Then softer. I have not had together since my parents died. It is strange finding it with the enemy. Maybe I'm not your enemy anymore, I said. Maybe, she agreed. Or maybe we are both enemies of ourselves, and that makes us ... Something else. I wanted to ask what that something else was, but I didn't. Some questions were better left to time and distance to answer. Instead, I returned to checking our supplies, taking inventory of what we'd need if we were going to stay ahead of Hendrix and navigate the complicated territory of her brother's rage. We were both quiet as the afternoon sun climbed higher, each lost in our own thoughts. But it was a different kind of quiet, now not the wariness of strangers or the silence of enemies, but something more complicated. Something that acknowledged the weight of the past while leaving room for a future that didn't have to be defined by it. Whether that future lasted a day or a year or longer, neither of us could say. But for now, in the shelter of the canyon with horses grazing nearby and danger on every horizon, it was enough to not be alone. We stayed in the canyon until dusk, taking turns sleeping while the other kept watch. When I woke from my shift, I found Aiyana sitting at the cave mouth, her eyes distant, fingers working at a piece of leather cord she'd found in the saddlebags. She was braiding it with practiced ease, creating patterns that looked like words I couldn't read. Apache prayer, she explained when she noticed me watching. For protection on a dangerous journey, my mother taught me when I was young. Does it work? We're still alive, she said. A hint of something not quite humor, but close touched her voice. As darkness fell, we prepared to move. Travel by night was risky, but less risky than giving Hendrix time to organize a larger posse. And if Dakota was hunting, he'd expect us to hole up defensively, not keep moving. We were saddling the horses when Aiyana froze, her head cocked, listening. A heartbeat later, I heard it too, the distant sound of riders, multiple horses moving through the canyon country. Too dark to see clearly, but the metallic jingle of gear carried on the night wind. How many? I whispered. She was silent for a moment, her eyes closed, reading the sounds the way some men read books. 6, maybe 7. Coming from the east. Hendrix's direction. Yes, but ... she frowned. Something is wrong. The horses are running too hard. Pushed. We moved deeper into the overhang, hands on our weapons, and waited. The riders grew closer, and in the pale starlight, I could make out their shapes. 6 men, riding like hell itself, was chasing them. They were almost past our position when one of the horses stumbled, and the rider tumbled from the saddle with a cry. The others reined in, circling back, and in their voices, I heard panic. Get up, they're right behind us. I can't my leg. Leave him. Leave him or we all die. A gunshot rang out from somewhere in the darkness behind them, and one of the riders jerked and fell. The others didn't stop, didn't even look back. They spurred their horses and disappeared into the night, leaving 2 men behind. The wounded rider on the ground tried to crawl, dragging a leg that bent at an unnatural angle. From the darkness beyond, shapes emerged, warriors on foot, moving with the silent purpose of wolves closing on wounded prey. Aiyana's hand gripped my arm, her fingers tight enough to bruise. Dakota, she breathed. There were 5 warriors, and they moved into the open area below our position with weapons drawn. They surrounded the wounded rider, who had given up trying to escape and now lay flat, hands raised in surrender. One of the warriors, taller than the others, with long black hair bound with red cloth, stepped forward. Even from a distance, I could see the resemblance to Aiyana in the way he moved, the set of his shoulders. Please, the wounded rider begged. Please, I got money. I got. Dakota's knife ended the plea. It was quick, efficient, and merciless. Beside me, Aiyana made a soft sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a sob. He wasn't always like this, she whispered. Before our parents died, he was gentle. He sang songs and told stories and laughed. Now ... War changes people, I said quietly. Makes them into things they never wanted to be. The warriors were searching the bodies now, taking weapons and ammunition. They spoke in Apache too quickly for me to follow, but their gestures were clear enough. They were arguing about something. They're deciding whether to pursue the others or return to camp, Aiyana translated. Some want revenge. Others want to get back before dawn. Dakota made a sharp gesture, clearly making the decision for them. They moved to leave, heading north directly toward our position. We need to, I started, but Aiyana was already standing, stepping out of the shadows. Dakota! She called in Apache, her voice ringing across the canyon. The warriors spun, weapons raised, and for a moment I thought they'd fire before recognizing her. But Dakota held up a hand, stopping them. He stared up at where Aiyana stood silhouetted against the stars, his expression unreadable. Aiyana? His voice carried disbelief. You're alive? I'm alive. They said you'd been sold. That the white men... He stopped, his eyes finding me as I stepped out behind her. His expression transformed instantly, rage replacing shock. Get away from him. Dakota, wait. Get away from him. He was running now, climbing the slope toward us, his warriors following. He's one of them. He saved me, Aiyana shouted, stepping between us. He bought me at the auction and freed me. He's not my captor. Dakota skidded to a stop 5 feet away, his knife still drawn, his chest heaving. Up close, I could see he was younger than I'd expected, maybe 22, with the same fierce eyes as his sister, but carrying a hardness that aged him. Freed you? He looked at me with naked hatred. White men don't free Apache. They lie, they take, they kill. That's all they do. Some of us are trying to do better, I said carefully. Your sister. Don't speak about my sister. He lunged forward, and only Aiyana's hand on his chest stopped him. You think you can buy her and then claim nobility? You think. I think your sister is a person, not property, I said, keeping my voice level despite my heart hammering. I think she deserves freedom and respect. I think. You think? Dakota laughed, a bitter sound. You think? Let me tell you what I know. I know white men killed our parents. I know they burned our home. I know they've taken our land, broken every promise, hunted us like animals. And I know that any white man who claims to be different is lying. He turned to Aiyana, his voice softening slightly. Come back with me. Leave this white devil. You're safe now. I'm safe with him, Aiyana said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dakota stared at his sister as if she'd struck him. What? I said I'm safe with him. He gave me a choice, Dakota. Something I haven't had since ... double quotes, she paused. Since before you became this person. This angry warrior who sees only enemies. They are enemies, all of them. He gestured wildly at me. How can you defend him? How can you stand there and... Because I've seen what hatred does to you. Aiyana's voice cracked with emotion. I've watched it eat away everything good in you. You used to be my brother, the boy who carved wooden horses, and told me stories about the old warriors. Now you're just ... angry. All the time. At everything. They killed our parents. I know. Tears streamed down her face now. I was there, remember? I saw mother die. I saw father fall. I carry those ghosts every day, but turning into a killer won't bring them back. It just makes more ghosts. Better to die fighting than live as their slave. I'm not asking you to be a slave. I'm asking you to be my brother again. To remember that not all white men are the same, just like not all Apache are the same. Mother taught us that. She said, Mother is dead. Dakota roared. Her teachings died with her. All that's left is this. He held up his bloodied knife. This is the only language they understand. Then what's the point? Aiyana asked, her voice breaking. What's the point of surviving if we become the monsters they say we are? Dakota was breathing hard, his eyes wild. For a moment, I saw the boy beneath the warrior, lost, hurt, desperate for something to make sense of a world that had taken everything from him. I knew that look. I'd worn it myself after the war. "Your sister is right," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me, but I kept my eyes on Dakota. Hatred is easy. Killing is easy. I know I've done plenty of both, but it doesn't fill the hole. Doesn't bring back what you lost. It just makes the hole bigger until there's nothing left but anger. "You don't get to lecture me," Dakota spat. "You don't get to." 7 years ago, I continued, I followed orders to raid an Apache camp in the Mogollon Rim. We killed 12 people, burned their winter stores. I'm told 3 of them were your cousins, your aunt, your sister's family. Dakota went very still. "What?" "I was there. I pulled the trigger. I helped set the fires. I did it because I was ordered to, because I was told it was necessary, because I didn't think about the faces behind the deaths." I took a breath. "Your sister knows this," I told her. "And she could have killed me, should have killed me. But she didn't, because she's stronger than I was. Stronger than you're being now." "You ... double quotes." Dakota's hand tightened on his knife. "You killed my family, and you stand there like you deserve forgiveness?" "No," I said. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve anything but the same hole in the ground I helped dig for your people. But your sister is giving me a chance to be better than I was, to choose different. That's more than I have any right to ask for, but I'm asking anyway." Dakota looked between me and Aiyana, something breaking in his expression. "You knew?" he asked his sister. "You knew what he did, and you still ... "I knew," Aiyana said. "And I'm still deciding what that means. But Dakota, he's not the same man who raided that camp. People can change. You've changed. I've changed. Everyone changes. The question is what we change into. I changed into a warrior, someone who protects our people." "No," Aiyana said gently. "You changed into someone who kills. There's a difference. A warrior protects. A killer just ... kills." Dakota's warriors shifted restlessly, watching the exchange with wary eyes. One of them, an older man with gray in his hair, spoke quietly in Apache. Aiyana translated for me. "He says they should return to camp. That this decision is between family, not for warriors to judge." Dakota waved them away with a sharp gesture. "Go. I'll follow." The warriors retreated, though not far. I could feel their presence in the darkness, watching, ready to intervene if their leader needed them. "What do you want from me?" Dakota asked finally, his voice tired. "What am I supposed to do? Shake his hand?" "Welcome him to our camp. He killed our family, Aiyana." "I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm not even sure I've forgiven him." She paused. "But I'm asking you to see that continuing this cycle of violence just creates more orphans. More brothers and sisters who lose their families. More people like us. They started it. It doesn't matter who started it. Someone has to end it. Why can't it be us?" Dakota laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You sound like Mother. Maybe that's not a bad thing." They stood in silence. Brother and sister, shaped by the same loss, but moving in opposite directions because of it. I stayed quiet, knowing this wasn't my decision to make or my argument to win. Finally, Dakota sheathed his knife. "I won't kill him," he said. "For you, I won't kill him, but I can't. I can't stand here and pretend he's anything but an enemy." "That's enough," Aiyana said, relief evident in her voice. "That's more than enough. But you can't stay with him. Come back to our camp. You'll be safe there, with our people." "I'll think about it," Aiyana said, which we all knew meant no. "But right now, we need to keep moving." "There are men hunting us, Hendrix's men," Dakota said. "We've been tracking them. They're hunting you." "Both of us," I confirmed. He's not happy I interfered with his business. Something shifted in Dakota's expression, not quite alliance, but recognition that we faced a common enemy. "How many?" "Started with 4, but he's probably gathered more by now. Could be a dozen riders by tomorrow. Then you'll need help." "We'll manage," I said carefully, not wanting to presume. "I wasn't offering to help you," Dakota said coldly. "I was offering to help my sister. You just happened to be there." He turned to Aiyana. "There's a settlement 3 days north, near the treaty lands. You could get supplies there, maybe find protection from the Indian agent." "The Indian agent who works for men like Hendricks?" Aiyana asked skeptically. "Some of them are decent. Some aren't. But you'll have a better chance there than running blind through the desert with a white man every rancher is hunting." It wasn't wrong, much as I hated to admit it. The further we ran, the more desperate our situation became. Eventually we'd run out of supplies or horses or luck. "I'll consider it," Aiyana said. Dakota looked at her for a long moment, then pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I thought you were dead," he whispered in Apache. "When I heard they'd taken you, I thought ... double quotes. I know," she whispered back. "I'm here. I'm alive." They held each other for a moment, and I turned away, giving them privacy. When I looked back, Dakota was already moving down the slope, heading toward where his warriors waited. He paused once, looking back at me. "If you hurt her," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the night air, "there's no place on this earth you can hide from me." "Understood," I said. He nodded once, then disappeared into the darkness with his warriors, leaving us alone in the canyon once more. Aiyana stood very still, watching the place where her brother had vanished. "That went better than I expected," she said quietly. "He didn't kill me," I agreed. "That's something. He loves me," she said. "Despite everything he's become, he still loves me. That's why he let you live. I know. And I'm grateful." I paused. He was right, though, about the settlement. "We can't run forever." "No," she agreed. "We can't." She turned to face me, her expression serious. "But Jace, if we go to the settlement, if we try to find help from white authorities, they might not see it the way we do. They might see you as a criminal for helping me, or see me as property that needs to be returned to Hendricks. Then we'll have to make them see different," I said, with more confidence than I felt. She smiled slightly, a small curve of her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't it be both?" This time her smile reached her eyes. "Yes, I think it can be both." We mounted our horses and rode north through the darkness, toward a settlement we'd never seen, seeking help from people who had no reason to give it. Behind us, Hendricks and his men hunted. Around us, the Apache territory stretched vast and unforgiving. Ahead, nothing but uncertainty and hope, thin as spider silk. But we rode together, and somehow, that made all the difference. 3 days of hard riding brought us to the settlement of Redemption, a name that felt too pointed to be coincidence. It sat at the edge of treaty lands, a handful of buildings clustered around a trading post, and what passed for a government office. The kind of place where Apache and white settlers were supposed to coexist peacefully, though judging by the suspicious looks and the clear division of the town into 2 sections, peace was more aspiration than reality. We'd stopped at a stream a mile out to wash the worst of the trail dust off and tend the horses. Aiyana had taken her long hair down from the rough braid it had been in and replaited it carefully, though she had no mirror. Something about the gesture, the care she took despite having so little, struck me as achingly human. "Ready?" I asked. "No," she said honestly. "But I don't think I'll be more ready with time." We rode in slowly, deliberately, keeping our hands visible and our weapons holstered. The few people on the street stopped to stare. A white man and an Ankum, Apache woman riding together was still unusual enough to draw attention, especially given how we looked. Trail-worn, exhausted, with the kind of weariness that spoke of people running from something. The trading post seemed our best bet, so we tied the horses outside and entered together. The interior smelled of leather and tobacco and the oil used to preserve fur. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 50s, her gray hair pulled back severely, her eyes sharp as they assessed us. "We don't want trouble," she said immediately, her hand moving beneath the counter where I suspected a gun waited. Neither do we, I said, keeping my voice even. We're looking for the Indian agent. We were told there's one stationed here. There is. But he don't take kindly to being disturbed before noon, and it's barely past dawn. Her eyes flicked to Aiyana, then back to me. That your property? Every muscle in my body tensed, but Aiyana spoke before I could. I am Aiyana of the Chiricahua. I am no man's property. The woman's expression shifted slightly, not quite approval, but something close to respect. Fair enough. Name's Margaret Finn. I run this post, and I got a nose for trouble. You two smell like it from a mile off. We've had some, I admitted. Nothing we're looking to share. We just need supplies and maybe some information. Information costs more than supplies, Margaret said. But I'm willing to negotiate if you're honest with me. Who's hunting you? I hesitated, but Aiyana stepped forward. A man named Calvin Hendricks, a rancher from Copper Bend. He tried to buy me at an auction, and Jace outbid him. He's been chasing us since. Margaret's expression darkened. Hendricks. Yeah, I know him. Bastard's had his eye on treaty lands for years, trying to push boundaries, claim water rights that aren't his. Indian agent's been pushing back, which makes him unpopular with men like Hendricks. She studied us both. You're telling me this white man here spent his money to save you from Hendricks? And Hendricks has been chasing you across the territory because of it? That's the truth of it, I said. Huh. Margaret pulled her hand from beneath the counter. No gun, just a ledger book. Then you're either the stupidest man I've met or the first honest one I've seen in a while. Can't decide which. She paused. Indian agent's name is Thomas Crawford. He's in the building next door. Probably still sleeping off last night's bottle. But he's a decent sort when he's sober, which is about half the time. You want to talk to him, that's where you'll find him. Thank you, Aiyana said. Don't thank me yet, Margaret said. This settlement's got a reputation for being neutral ground, but that only goes so far. If Hendricks shows up with enough men, Crawford won't be able to do much. And I can't have a war breaking out in my street. It's bad for business. We understand, I said. We're just looking for a way out of this that doesn't end with someone dying. Good luck with that, Margaret said dryly. In my experience, men like Hendricks don't stop until they get what they want or someone puts them down permanent. But maybe Crawford can help. He's got the law on his side, at least on paper. We bought basic supplies, coffee, hardtack, ammunition, and left the trading post. The building next door was smaller, with a hand-painted sign reading Bureau of Indian Affairs above the entrance. I knocked, got no answer, knocked again. Come back later. A voice shouted from inside, thick with sleep and irritation. It's urgent, I called back. Everything's urgent. Doesn't mean it can't wait. Aiyana pushed past me and tried the door. It was unlocked. We entered to find a man in his 40s sitting up on a cot in the corner, his hair standing in all directions, his eyes bloodshot. Thomas Crawford, presumably. I said come back later, he growled. A woman was sold at an illegal auction in Copper Bend 3 days ago, Aiyana said flatly. And the man who tried to buy her is now hunting us both across the territory. Is that urgent enough? Crawford blinked, processing this. Then he stood, swaying slightly, and reached for a bottle on his desk. Instead of drinking, he poured water from it over his head, shocking himself awake. All right, he said, water dripping down his face. You've got my attention. Start from the beginning. We told him everything: the auction, Hendricks's pursuit, the burning of my ranch, our flight through the territory. Crawford listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as the story unfolded. Hendricks, he said when we finished. That son of a bitch has been a thorn in my side for years. But having him in an illegal auction, that's new. And stupid even for him. He looked at Aiyana. You're Chiricahua, are you on the treaty rolls? No, she said. My band refuses to register. We won't be counted like cattle. That makes this complicated, Crawford said. If you're not on the rolls, I can't officially claim jurisdiction. But he held up a hand as Aiyana started to protest. That doesn't mean I can't do anything. The auction itself was illegal, regardless of who was being sold. And if Hendrix is making threats, pursuing you across treaty lands, that gives me grounds to intervene. Can you arrest him? I asked. Not without witnesses and evidence. And even then, he's got friends in territorial government. But I can make his life difficult, put pressure on him through official channels. Maybe convince him the trouble isn't worth it. Crawford paused. Course, that only works if he's a reasonable man. Is he? No, Aiyana and I said simultaneously. Crawford sighed. Didn't think so. He pulled out a chair and sat heavily. All right, here's what I can do. I can write to the marshal in Tucson, explain the situation, request an investigation. That'll take at least a week, maybe 2. In the meantime, you're both welcome to stay here in Redemption. It's neutral territory. Even Hendrix won't risk an open confrontation in a settlement under federal protection. Will he respect that? I asked. Probably not. But it gives us legal standing if he doesn't, and that's worth something. Crawford looked at us both. Fair warning, this town's got about 20 permanent residents, plus however many Apache are camped nearby at any given time. We don't have a militia, don't have a marshal. What we have is my authority, and the hope that most people would rather avoid trouble. If Hendrix comes with a dozen men, I can't stop him. Best I can do is make sure there are witnesses and consequences after the fact. It wasn't much, but it was more than we'd had before. We'll stay, I said, looking at Aiyana. She nodded agreement. Good. Margaret's got a boarding house, nothing fancy but clean. I'll square it with her. Tell her to put it on the federal account. You can stay there, rest up while I work the official angles. Crawford stood, steadier now that he'd fully woken. And for what it's worth, what you did was decent. Stupid, maybe. But decent. We need more stupid, decent people in the territory. Thanks, I said dryly. I think. Margaret's boarding house was attached to the trading post, a series of small rooms with thin walls and narrow beds. She showed us to a single room, which made me hesitate. It's all I got, Margaret said, reading my expression. You want separate rooms. You can camp outside. I won't judge either way. It's fine, Aiyana said. She looked at me. Unless you. It's fine, I agreed quickly. Margaret left us alone. The room was sparse: a bed, a chair, a small table with a basin for washing. One window looked out over the main street. I could see Crawford's office from here, could watch the few people moving about their morning business. I'll take the floor, I said. Don't be foolish. The bed is large enough for both, and we're both exhausted. Aiyana sat on the edge of the mattress testing it. Besides, we've slept closer than this in the canyon. She was right, but something about a bed, a room, the intimacy of 4 walls made it different. Made it feel less like survival and more like ... something else. Aiyana, don't, she said quietly. Don't apologize or explain or make it complicated. We're both adults. We've been through enough together that sleeping in the same room shouldn't be the thing that makes us awkward. She paused. Unless you don't trust yourself around me? I trust myself fine, I said, probably too quickly. I just want to make sure you feel safe. I feel safer with you than I've felt in months, she said, and the simple honesty of it hit harder than any declaration could have. So please, Jace, stop treating me like I'm fragile. I'm not. I'm just ... tired. So we slept, fully clothed, on opposite sides of the bed with a careful gap between us. I lay awake for a long time, listening to her breathing, even out, feeling the warmth of her presence even across the distance. I'd spent 5 years sleeping alone, and I'd told myself I preferred it that way. But having another person there, knowing I wasn't the only one keeping watch against the darkness, it was a comfort I hadn't known I'd been missing. Eventually, exhaustion won over vigilance, and I slept. I woke to voices outside, raised, angry voices. The sun was high, meaning we'd slept most of the day. Beside me, Aiyana was already sitting up, her hand on the pistol she'd kept under her pillow. "How many?" she whispered. I moved to the window and looked out. My blood turned to ice. Hendricks had arrived, and he hadn't come alone. A dozen riders sat their horses in the main street, armed and looking for trouble. Hendricks himself was facing Crawford, who stood in front of his office with his arms crossed. "Don't care about your federal authority," Hendricks was saying, his voice carrying clearly. "That woman has stolen property, and I'm here to reclaim her." "She's a person, not property," Crawford said firmly. "And she's under federal protection. You want to press charges about some perceived theft, you can file proper paperwork and go through proper channels. But you're not taking anyone by force, not in my settlement." "Your settlement?" Hendricks laughed. "You mean this handful of shacks? This isn't a settlement, Crawford. It's a joke. And you're a joke-a-drunk who hides behind a badge that doesn't mean anything out here." Crawford's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. "Leave, now, or I'll have grounds to report this as an attempted kidnapping on federal land." "Report it to whoever you want," Hendricks said. He gestured, and his men began to spread out, surrounding the buildings. "I'm not leaving without what's mine. We need to run," Aiyana said behind me. "Get the horses, go out the back. They'll have men covering the exits," I said, watching Hendricks's men position themselves. "This isn't random. He planned this." "Then what do we do?" I turned to face her. "We go down there. We face this head-on. That's suicide, maybe, but I'm tired of running. And Crawford's right, if we let Hendricks take you by force, it sets a precedent. Shows that law doesn't mean anything out here. Someone has to make a stand. You'll die." "Probably," I agreed. "But I'll die doing the right thing." That's more than I could say for most of my life. I checked my rifle, made sure it was loaded. "You don't have to come. You can hide, wait for an opening." "Don't be stupid," she said, checking her own weapons. "We face it together." "That's what we do now." So we walked downstairs together, through the trading post where Margaret watched with worry in her eyes, out onto the street where Hendricks and his men waited. The crowd had grown Apache from the nearby camps, settlers from the surrounding farms, people drawn by the promise of violence or just curious about the confrontation. They formed a loose circle around the scene, witnesses to whatever came next. Hendricks saw us emerge and smiled, cruel and satisfied. "There she is. The woman who's cost me so much trouble." His eyes found mine. "And Mercer? Still playing hero?" "Still being human," I said. "You should try it sometime." "Human." He spat the word. "You burned my patience, Mercer. Burned any mercy I might have shown. Now I'm going to take what's mine, and I'm going to make sure everyone here sees what happens to people who cross me. She's not yours," Crawford said, still standing between us. "And if you try to take her, you'll face federal charges." "Federal charges?" Hendricks laughed again, and his men joined in. "And who's going to enforce them? You and what army?" He looked around at the watching crowd. "Anyone here want to stand with this drunk and these two fools? Anyone want to make this their fight?" Silence. People shifted, looked away. No one stepped forward. We were alone. "That's what I thought," Hendricks said. He dismounted, his men following suit. "Now we can do this easy or hard. Your choice." "There's another option," a voice said from behind us. Everyone turned. Dakota stood at the edge of the crowd, 5 warriors with him, all armed. He walked forward slowly, his eyes on Hendricks. "You," Hendricks said. "I know you. You're that renegade who's been raiding my territory. Got a price on your head. And you're the man who sells people," Dakota said. "Who burns homes and steals land. Between us, I wonder who's the real criminal. This doesn't concern you. Apache. My sister makes it my concern." Dakota took his place beside Aiyana, and for the first time since we'd met, I saw him look at me with something other than hatred, not quite friendship, but acknowledgement. "You want her, you go through all of us." Hendricks's expression darkened. He looked at his men, calculating odds. 12 against. I counted quickly 8, with Crawford making 9. Not good odds for Hendricks, not anymore. Not when his opponent included trained Apache warriors who knew 100 ways to kill a man. "You're making a mistake," Hendricks said. "Probably," Dakota agreed. "But she's my sister. For her, I'll make mistakes." For a long moment, no one moved. The whole settlement seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if blood would be spilled in the street. Then Margaret stepped out of the trading post, a shotgun in her hands. "Federal property," she announced. "This settlement's under federal protection, and I'll shoot anyone who starts trouble. I don't care which side you're on." One by one, other settlers emerged, not many, maybe 5 or 6, but enough. Enough to shift the balance, to make Hendricks's victory uncertain instead of guaranteed. He saw it too. Saw that he could probably still win, but it would be costly. And men like Hendricks didn't get where they were by taking costly risks when easier options existed. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Not by a long shot. I'll be back, with proper warrants and more men. And next time, federal protection won't mean anything." "Looking forward to it," Crawford said. Hendricks mounted his horse, gestured to his men. They rode out slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone knew this was a strategic withdrawal, not a retreat. But they left. The crowd dispersed slowly, the moment of violence averted. Dakota turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "Don't think this makes us friends," he said. "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied. "But my sister chose you, so I choose to not kill you. That's as close to acceptance as you'll get from me. I'll take it." He nodded once, then looked at Aiyana. "You're sure about this?" "About him?" "No," she said honestly. "But I'm sure I need to find out. And I can't do that if I'm dead or running forever." "Then I'll wait," Dakota said. "Wait and watch. If he hurts you." "I know," she said softly. "You'll kill him." "I know." They embraced briefly, and then Dakota and his warriors were gone, melting back into the crowd and then beyond it, returning to whatever camp they'd come from. Crawford approached, looking exhausted. "That was too close." "Thank you," I said, "for standing with us." "Don't thank me yet. Hendricks meant what he said. He'll be back. And next time he'll have law on his side, or something that looks enough like law to fool people." "We bought time, not victory. Time's enough," Aiyana said. "For now." Crawford nodded and returned to his office, already composing the letters he'd promised. Margaret ushered us back inside, muttering about fools and trouble and how she was too old for this nonsense. Back in our room, Aiyana sat on the bed and finally let the tension drain from her shoulders. I saw her hands shake, the adrenaline leaving her system, and watched her fight to control it. "That was close," she said quietly. "Too close. My brother came," she said, wonder in her voice. "After everything, after all the anger. He came. Family's complicated," I said. "But at the end of everything, sometimes it's all we have." She looked at me, her eyes searching. "Is that what we are now, family?" The question hung between us, weighted with everything we'd been through, everything we'd survived together. I thought about the answer, about what it meant to claim kinship with someone you'd wronged, someone you'd saved, someone who'd saved you in return. "I don't know what we are," I said honestly. "But I know I'd stand with you again. Face down Hendricks again, or anyone else. That has to count for something." "It does," she said. She stood, crossed the small space between us, and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, strong. "Whatever this is, whatever we become, I want you to know something. I haven't forgiven you for what you did to my people. I don't know if I ever will." The words should have hurt, but there was something in her eyes that softened them. "But," she continued, "I'm beginning to understand that people are more than their worst moments. That maybe the measure of a person isn't what they did wrong, but what they choose to do after. How they try to make amends. I don't know how to make amends for what I did," I said. "Seems like nothing would be enough. Maybe amends aren't about grand gestures," she said. "Maybe they're about standing in a street, ready to die rather than let another person be taken. Maybe they're about choosing kindness when hatred would be easier. She was still holding my hand, and I was acutely aware of her closeness, of the way her presence seemed to fill the small room. "Aiyana, don't," she said. "Don't make this complicated. Don't analyze it or apologize for it. Just be here, with me." That's enough, so I was. We stood there together as the sun sank toward the horizon, two people shaped by violence and loss, finding something like peace in each other's presence. Outside, the settlement of redemption lived up to its name for a little while at least. The days that followed fell into an uneasy rhythm. Crawford worked his official channels, writing letters to the territorial marshal and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, building a case against Hendricks. Margaret gave us work around the trading post. I repaired the leaning roof while Aiyana helped sort inventory and translate for Apache customers who came to trade. It was almost peaceful, almost normal. But we both knew it was temporary. Dakota visited twice, always with his warriors, always wary. He and I maintained a careful distance, circling each other like wolves from different packs forced to share hunting grounds, but he was civil, which was more than I'd expected. On his second visit, he pulled Aiyana aside. I watched them talk in Apache, saw the intensity in their gestures, the way Dakota kept glancing at me. When they finished, Aiyana's expression was troubled. "He says Hendricks has been gathering men," she told me later, "not just ranch hands, bounty hunters, mercenaries. Men who don't care about law or consequences. He's preparing something big. How long do we have? A week. Maybe less." I found Crawford that evening and told him. He listened grimly, then pulled out a bottle, not to drink, but to stare at, like he was considering it. "I sent the letters," he said. "But the marshal's response, if it comes at all, won't arrive for another 2 weeks. And even then, he might not be able to do anything. Hendricks has friends in high places, so we're on our own. Looks like it." Crawford set the bottle down decisively, pushing it away. "But you're not completely without resources. This settlement might be small, but the people here chose to live on neutral ground for a reason. Some of them are running from things, some are just tired of fighting. But most of them believe in what this place represents, a chance for something different. That counts for something. Enough to stand against Hendricks? Ask them," Crawford said. "See what they say." So I did. I spoke to Margaret first, who just snorted and said she'd already made her choice when she stood in the street with her shotgun. Then I talked to the other settlers, the blacksmith who'd fled debts in Kansas, the widow running the small restaurant, the carpenter who'd lost his family to war and was trying to rebuild something here. Most said yes. Not because they liked me or cared about Aiyana specifically, but because Hendricks represented everything they'd come here to escape. The men who took what they wanted, who believed might made right, who saw people as things to be owned or destroyed. By week's end, we had 15 people willing to stand, 15 against however many Hendricks brought. It wasn't enough, but it was something. They came at dawn, as the eastern sky was just beginning to lighten. I was on watch. We'd established a rotation, knowing this was coming, and saw them cresting the rise about a mile out. Too many to count in the dim light, but more than a dozen. Maybe 20. I rang the bell we'd mounted outside Crawford's office, the signal we'd agreed on. Within minutes, the settlement was awake and moving. Our defenders took positions, in windows, behind water troughs, on rooftops. It wasn't much of a fortification, but it was what we had. Aiyana appeared beside me, already armed. "How many?" "At least 20, maybe more. Dakota?" "Sent her runner last night. If he's coming, he should be here soon." "And if he's not?" I didn't answer. We both knew what that meant. Hendricks and his force approached slowly, deliberately. When they were close enough for conversation, he held up a hand and his men stopped. He rode forward alone, stopping about 50 feet from where Crawford stood in the street. "Morning, Crawford," Hendricks called. "Beautiful day for justice, don't you think?" "That depends on your definition of justice," Crawford replied. Mine says you're here illegally, threatening federal property with a private militia. Militia? Hendricks laughed. These are just concerned citizens, helping to apprehend a fugitive and her accomplice. All legal and proper. He held up a paper. Got myself a warrant, signed by Judge Morrison in Copper Bend. Says I'm authorized to bring in Jace Mercer for theft of property and Aiyana, no last name given, for questioning regarding raids on my land. Let me see that warrant, Crawford said. Hendricks rode closer, handed it over. Crawford read it, his expression darkening. This is bullshit. Morrison's in your pocket, everyone knows it. And these charges are fabricated. Maybe, Hendricks agreed cheerfully. But it's a legal document, signed by a sitting judge. Which means I'm not the one breaking the law here, you are, by harboring fugitives. I could see Crawford's jaw working, see him trying to find an angle, some legal ground to stand on. But Hendricks had outmaneuvered him. The warrant might be corrupt, might be based on lies, but it existed. And in the lawless sprawl of the territory, a piece of paper signed by a judge carried weight. I won't let you take them, Crawford said finally. Then you're obstructing justice. That's a federal offense, Crawford. You really want to throw away your career, maybe face prison time for these two. Crawford looked back at where I stood with Aiyana. In his eyes I saw the calculation, saw him weighing his principles against his survival. I didn't blame him. I'd made the same calculation before and chosen wrong more times than I cared to remember. It's all right, I called out. We'll come peacefully. No, Aiyana said sharply. Jace, it's the only way. I kept my eyes on Hendricks. We go with him, face these charges properly. If we're innocent, we'll be cleared. If not, ... I shrugged. At least the settlement doesn't burn. It was a lie and everyone knew it. Once Hendricks had us, we'd never see a courtroom. We'd disappear into the desert, our bodies left for the buzzards, and he'd tell whatever story served him best. But the lie gave Crawford an out. Let him step aside without admitting defeat. Hold on. Margaret's voice rang out from the trading post. She emerged with someone I didn't recognize, a man in his 60s, dressed in formal clothes that seemed ridiculous in the frontier setting. This here's Judge Whitmore, from Tucson. He arrived last night on the supply wagon. Hendricks's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been concern. Judge Whitmore walked forward with the dignified slowness of someone who'd earned the right to set his own pace. He took the warrant from Crawford, read it carefully, then looked at Hendricks. This is your warrant? Yes, Your Honor, all properly executed. Properly executed, Whitmore repeated. He tore the paper in half. This document is worthless. Judge Morrison has no jurisdiction over treaty lands, and this settlement falls clearly within federal oversight. Moreover, the charges listed here are laughably thin. Theft of property that was illegally sold, questioning regarding raids that occurred nowhere near the defendant's location at the time. Your Honor, I must protest. Protest all you want, Whitmore said. But I'm issuing a ruling right now, from this street, that these charges are dismissed and this warrant is void. Furthermore, I'm filing a complaint with the territorial court regarding Judge Morrison's overreach of authority. He'll be lucky if he keeps his position. Hendricks's face had gone dark red. You can't do this. I just did. Now you and your men can leave peacefully, or I can charge you with attempted kidnapping, unlawful assembly, and threatening a federal officer. Your choice. This isn't over. No, actually it is. Whitmore's voice carried surprising steel for a man his age. I've been a judge for 30 years, Mr. Hendricks. I've seen men like you in every territory, men who think they can buy or bully their way to whatever they want. Sometimes it works, but not today, not here. Today, the law actually means something. The silence stretched. Hendricks's men shifted restlessly, waiting for orders. I could see Hendricks weighing his options, ride away and lose face, or fight and risk everything. You're making enemies, Hendricks said finally. All of you. This town, everyone in it. You'll regret this. Probably, Whitmore agreed. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today you're leaving. For a moment longer, Hendricks stared. Then he yanked his horse's head around and spurred it back toward his men. Let's go, he shouted, but not all of them moved. 3 men, rough-looking types who I pegged as bounty hunters, stayed mounted, their eyes fixed on me and Aiyana. The warrant might be void, one of them called out, but there's still prices on heads. Indian raiders, thieves, worth more money than whatever Hendricks is paying. You draw those guns, Crawford said, his hand moving to his own weapon, and you'll start a war you can't win. Worth the risk, the bounty hunter said. He started to draw. The arrow took him in the shoulder, spinning him from his saddle. His companions looked around wildly as more arrows hissed from the surrounding rocks. Dakota and his warriors had arrived, positioning themselves on the high ground around the settlement. The other 2 bounty hunters went for their weapons. They didn't make it. Dakota was already moving, his warriors with him, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Within seconds, it was over. The bounty hunters disarmed and on the ground, wounded, but alive. Dakota looked at Hendricks, who sat frozen on his horse. Leave, he said in English, before I change my mind about letting you live. This time, Hendricks didn't hesitate. He and his remaining men rode out at a gallop, leaving their wounded behind. Judge Whitmore surveyed the scene, took in the wounded bounty hunters and the Apache warriors and the settlers who'd been ready to fight, and shook his head slowly. In 30 years, I've never seen anything quite like this. Welcome to redemption, Margaret said dryly. They patched up the bounty hunters. Margaret wouldn't let anyone die in her settlement, even enemies, and Crawford arranged for them to be transported to Tucson for trial. Judge Whitmore stayed for 3 days, conducting official business and asking questions about Hendricks's activities in the territory. I can't promise anything, he told us before he left, but I'm going to make noise in the right circles. Hendricks has gotten away with too much for too long. Men like him only stop when someone with actual authority pushes back. After he left, the settlement slowly returned to normal. Dakota and his warriors departed, though not before Dakota pulled me aside. My sister has chosen her path, he said. I don't understand it, but I won't stand against it anymore. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, just ... double quotes. He paused, struggling with words. Just be worth it. Be worth what she's risking by trusting you. I'll try, I said. It was the only promise I could make. He nodded and left. I watched him go, this young warrior shaped by anger and loss, and hoped that someday he'd find his own path to something besides rage. That night, Aiyana and I sat on the roof of the trading post, watching stars appear as the sky darkened. Below, the settlement was quiet, people finally allowing themselves to relax after days of tension. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. Hendricks might try again, might not. Judge Whitmore might actually be able to do something about him, or the whole thing might blow over and leave us back where we started. That's not what I mean. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting starlight. I mean with us. What happens with us? It was the question I'd been avoiding, the one that had grown larger with every day we spent together, every moment we survived side by side. I'd like to rebuild my ranch, I said slowly. Start over. Maybe do it right this time, raise cattle, live quiet, stay out of trouble. I paused. And I'd like you to be there. If you want. As what? She asked. Your hired hand, your ward? As my partner, I interrupted. In all of it. The work, the building, the living, everything. I took a breath. I know it's complicated. I know your people might not accept it, that my people might not either. I know we've got history that can't be erased. But Aiyana, these past weeks, I felt more alive, more myself, than I have since before the war. And I think maybe that's because of you. She was quiet for a long moment. My mother used to say that the spirits guide us toward the people we need, not the people we want. She said the difference between the two is wisdom. Do you need me? I asked. Yes, she said simply. I didn't want to. I fought against it. But yes, I need you. You see me, not as property, not as some exotic thing, not as a symbol of your redemption. Just as me, Aiyana, a person trying to find her way in a world that keeps changing the rules. Then come with me, I said. Help me rebuild. We'll make something new, not Apache, not white, but something else. Something ours. She smiled, and in the starlight, she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with features and everything to do with the light in her eyes. Something ours, she repeated. I liked the sound of that. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and we sat there as night deepened. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. It always did. The wounds between our peoples ran too deep to heal quickly, and men like Hendrix would always exist, always push against anything different or new. But tonight, on a rooftop in a settlement called Redemption, we'd found something worth fighting for. Not revenge or justice or even survival, but the simple possibility of building a life together. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, but it was enough. 6 months later, the ranch was taking shape again. The barn still leaned to the east. Some things couldn't be completely fixed, but it had a new roof and fresh paint. The cabin had been expanded, a second room added where Aiyana could keep her weaving and the herbs she gathered from the hills. The corrals were mended, and a small herd of cattle grazed in the valley, breeding stock I'd bought with money saved and earned. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Dakota visited occasionally, always unexpected, always watchful. He and I maintained our careful distance, but he'd started teaching me Apache words, and I'd shown him how to repair the windmill that drew water from the deep well. It wasn't friendship, exactly, but it was something adjacent to it. Crawford wrote letters, updating us on legal proceedings. Judge Whitmore had made good on his promise. Hendrix was facing investigations, his land claims being reviewed, his business partnerships crumbling. It would take years to fully untangle his corruption, but the momentum had shifted. Margaret sent supplies and gossip from Redemption, her notes full of dry observations about humanity's capacity for both foolishness and surprising decency. And Aiyana and I built our life day by day, choice by choice. We worked side by side, her teaching me the plants that healed and the songs that called rain, me teaching her the mysteries of barbed wire and the stubborn patience required to gentle wild horses. We argued about methods and laughed at failures and lay awake some nights, listening to the wind, wondering if we were crazy to think this could work. But mostly we just lived. One evening, as the sun painted the western sky in shades of orange and gold, Aiyana found me at the edge of the valley, looking out over the land we'd claimed. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I never expected this," I said. "This peace, this contentment. After everything I did, everything I was, I didn't think I deserved it." "You don't," she said bluntly. Then softer, "Neither do I deserve is the wrong word. We're not earning this, Jace. We're just living it. Choosing it every day, despite everything that says we shouldn't. Is that enough?" I asked. "Just choosing?" "It's everything," she said. She took my hand, laced her fingers through mine. "My people have a saying, we cannot change the wind, but we can adjust our sails. You and I, we can't change what happened to my family, to your soul, to all the people caught between us. But we can adjust. We can choose different. We can build something new from the ashes of what was burned." "Something new," I repeated. I looked at her, this woman who had every reason to hate me, but chose something else instead. "You think it'll last, what we're building?" "No," she said honestly. "The world doesn't reward people like us, people who cross the lines, who refuse to stay in their assigned places. Something will come to test this, probably sooner than we'd like. Another Hendrix, another raid, another person who can't accept what we've chosen." Cheerful thought. She smiled. "But until then, we have this. This valley, this work, this choice we keep making. And maybe that's what love is in a broken world, not the promise of forever, but the commitment to right now." to standing together even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Love. She'd said it so casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was, for her. But for me, the word carried weight, all the love I'd failed to show, failed to protect, failed to deserve. I love you, I said, testing the words. I don't know if I have the right to say it, but I do. I love you, Aiyana. I know, she said. You've been showing me every day in how you listen when I speak, in how you ask instead of assume, in how you stand beside me instead of in front of me. Words are good, Jace, but actions are better. Then I'll keep acting, I promised. Every day. For as long as you'll have me. Deal, she said, and kissed me there as the sun set over land that had seen too much blood and heartbreak, but was, perhaps, learning to bloom again. That night, lying beside her in the darkness of our cabin, I thought about the path that had brought me here. The war, the violence, the moment on an auction block when I'd made a choice that changed everything. I couldn't undo my past. Couldn't bring back the 12 Apache I'd helped kill, or erase the other deaths I'd dealt in service of causes I no longer believed in. Those ghosts would follow me to the grave, and rightly so. But I could choose, every day, to be someone different, someone who built instead of burned, someone who stood for the powerless instead of following orders blindly, someone who loved, even though he'd forfeited the right to expect love in return. Beside me, Aiyana slept peacefully, her breathing steady and deep. In the morning, we'd rise and work the land, tending to cattle and garden and all the small details that turned a collection of buildings into a home. We'd face whatever came together. And if the world eventually came to tear apart what we'd built, well, at least we'd have tried. At least we'd stood for something besides hate and violence and the endless cycle of revenge. At least we'd chosen love in a land that had seen too little of it. The night wind rattled the windows, carrying the scent of sage and dust and rain coming from the mountains. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called to its pack, and the horses in the corral answered with soft nickers. I closed my eyes and let the sounds of the ranch lull me toward sleep. Tomorrow would bring its own struggles. But tonight, in the shelter of walls we'd rebuilt together, I was content. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. The night they put her on that dusty auction block, I knew two things. The world had gone rotten, and I'd burn it all down before I let her be taken. Turns out, I didn't need to burn the world. Just my old self. And in the ashes, we built something new.
Thanks for watching this story till the end. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And before you go, check out these other amazing Western stories waiting for you next. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next ride.